In today's episode, I talk with John Novak. He was the president of Sokol for nearly 25 years, which was founded by his great-grandfather in 1895. Sokol started as a wholesaler and importer, and through the years developed into a leader in contract manufacturing. John grew up in this company, and he's experienced all the sides of his family business. He's proud of the company and culture he helped build, where his employees feel valued and empowered. Right now, so I want to welcome you, John, to our podcast. And I'm so excited to hear a lot of things about Sokol and about the family and about what has transpired since the company started in 1895.
Wow, yeah, long time ago. Yeah, long time ago. Yeah, it was my vision of my great-grandfather, John Sokol, who was an immigrant here at about 17 years old from the Czech Republic. And, you know, he got involved in Chicago in the grocery industry, really starting out bagging groceries, really downtown, and went to school at night. The story goes that he borrowed $100 from the gentleman he worked for at some point after he got a little bit of education here and learned the language, and started his own wholesale grocery.
With $100?
With $100.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder what $100 was worth now. So it probably was a lot to ask for.
Yeah, had a few zeros, yeah, for sure.
I understand he started with one store, and then it went...
One store, Polk and Paulina in Chicago.
Okay.
And I ended up with a couple of stores, and then eventually he wanted to be wholesale, not retail, at the end of the day, and was able to move into a larger facility on Illinois Street in Chicago. I'm not sure exactly what year.
And then he started doing some manufacturing. I guess I read somewhere that it was spice blending, and
yeah, his passion was really importing. He was just fascinated by where everything came from and source, and so he, you know, as hard as it was back then, he traveled quite a bit to develop relationships with shippers overseas and Mexico as well. You know, and he became an importer and then distributor in Chicago. That was really what he liked to do.
And then who took the company over from him?
Well, he ran the company until he passed away suddenly in, 1943. And there's a story just before that he had gone over to Europe sourcing for the next season in the spring of like 39. And just before, you know, he came back and he told everybody, look, I've got all the goods for our customers. Tell them all we're ready to go. And all the product would be coming. And then September 1, Hitler invaded Poland and started World War II. And that was the end of any goods coming from Europe at that point. So I tell the story because I think it's part of our history, obviously, but the resiliency of the company over two world wars, two pandemics now, you know, and finding ways to survive by, you know, pivoting into something else. He got involved in developing a dehydration facility to, at that point, to serve the war effort with some other people in the States.
He didn't get any of those products that he had?
No, that was all bets were off. It was nothing but bombs and bullets going back and forth. Yeah, wow. At that point.
Wow. And then how many years later did he die?
He died in, 52? No, 43. So
okay.
Just a few years later, suddenly, just before Christmas. And then his son-in-law was working in the business with him. He had one daughter, took over from him then.
And then how long did he run the company?
He ran the business for about 8 years, and he actually passed away suddenly as well in his early 60s. And then my grandmother, who was the only child of the founder, took over. My dad was still in college, so at Northwestern, had a commitment to the Air Force after that, and was not necessarily committed to coming to the family business, but I think as I talked to him about it later, he felt a real obligation. He did like it, but he felt an obligation to come back and do that after his Air Force commitment.
So your grandmother ran it for how long?
About 8 years.
What was the status of the company at that time? What were they doing?
I mean, a little bit in disarray. I mean, obviously, two presidents prior passing away, the war, but we had some really good people, very loyal. I got a chance to meet some of them at the ends of their careers when I came, and the stories were amazing. And people that had come to work part time here to make a little extra money, and 40 years later they were still here full time. Things like that, which were pretty cool.
And what products were they making at the time?
Well, we were importing for sure. Still, in the 40s, we launched a line of cake and pastry fillings, which were the Solo brand. Bakery fillings for the retail trade, and that became part of that really was the beginning of our manufacturing of value-added products.
Your dad ran the company for how long?
Quite a long time. He was president from 75 until like 95, so about 20 years, right? Yeah, I think that's right.
Is that when you came president in 95?
Yeah, and he was by title he was president at that point, but he was here since the early 60s. So I think my grandmother remained president, but was not active after he got his feet on the ground. So
I was going to say, did your grandmother stick around for a while, or did she just?
That wasn't going to work probably too long, but yeah. So
did they butt heads?
Yeah, I think there was a little bit of that. But she was glad he was back, and he had a sister who was 8 years younger and still, in college, and that wasn't really part of the business even going forward, other than a little bit of from the shareholder standpoint, board member, so forth. So
this is how the company became Novak's instead of Sokol family.
Right. The one Sokol child married a Novak.
How was the transition from you becoming president to your father? How was that transition?
It was interesting because we were going through, prior to that actual transition, we were going through a transition of the company from an importer, reseller, to manufacturing, which was my love and still is creating something from nothing. And I love the equipment side of it, the engineering part of it. And so we kind of headed in that direction. And at the same time, the spices and people that, like McCormick were our customers. They became integrated themselves vertically, all the way to the fields and farms. So it was tough for middlemen to be involved in that and survive. So we transitioned out, and I actually remember the board meeting that we had that we actually made the final decision to exit, which was real difficult for my dad, but it was a transition point for the company because it's hard to have your focus on too many things at the same time. So
let's back up a little bit. So you grew up in this company. So what was your first job there?
I had a couple different ones, but the one I remember the most was we're a producer of anchovy paste. So I was working in that, mostly summers, but in that production area, grinding anchovies into anchovy paste. And it's something, pretty interesting at 6 o'clock in the morning to have your face down in a barrel of anchovies and working through them after they've been cured for about 9 months.
So how old were you? Summers of high school or summers of college?
14.
14?
But I do remember going down to Chicago before we moved out to where we are now in 67 on weekends with my father to Illinois Street. And, he would catch up on work and I'd ride the elevators and check out if there was, production going on. I would be interested in that, but usually it was pretty quiet. So,
do you have any siblings?
I do, brother and a sister.
Did they work in the business?
They did not really. A little bit on summers, but never. They all had kind of career aspirations outside of the food business and pursued those, and so I was the only one.
So you're the only one tagging along with Dad.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
Everybody's like, there he comes again. Because aren't most people afraid of the owner's son?
I don't know. Maybe I had a pretty good relationship, I think, with most, and they're people just like anybody else, and So we always got along. And you know, it's one of the things I miss the most about the retirement part of the last few years, the last couple of years, is not having the contact with people here, and
Yeah.
as much as I do. So today
Yeah.
is a fun day to be back.
Oh, good. Good. So I know you went to college. You didn't
Yep.
just graduate from high school and run into the business. So you went to college. What did you go to college for?
Well, ended up in business
Okay.
management. I wish probably in retrospect I would have done engineering, but I didn't like math that much. So um, it was that, and then I worked in a couple other companies for about 2 years prior to coming here full time.
Mm-hmm.
Board of Trade was one of them. So, you know, still around food a little bit, but I wanted to have a little bit of a break between college and coming here full time because I knew it would be my career, most likely.
So you knew that the expectation was you were going to go there. So
Yeah, I mean, it was for me. There was no pressure that I
mm-hmm.
felt to do that. It was more opportunity and something that I liked and had been exposed to for years and years before that. So
Mm-hmm.
it was fairly easy for me.
And what was your first salaried professional job when you joined Sokol?
Yeah, I was put on the collection desk in the accounting department.
Really?
Believe it or not. Yep.
How did you like that?
Well, I didn't like it so much calling people that didn't really want to talk to you about the fact that they owed you money that was a little bit late. And I do remember one large customer that we had that had pretty good open balance, and so I'm gonna play hardball, and try to collect this money, and pretty much tell them that, look, if we don't see something soon, we're going to have to hold up your next shipment. Well, I thought the roof blew off the building about 10 minutes later because he called, my dad and the head of the sales department and said, who is this guy? And, longtime customer. And I guess the terms were wrong in our system. And, I got on the phone and had to apologize, which was fine. But so I made sure I knew what I was talking about before I ever asked people for money again.
But you're like, Dad, it's your fault. You told me to do this.
Yeah. No, it was kind of a printout that was going on, so not enough information there,
How long did you last in that job?
I think it was about 6 months, and there was some other things around accounting, trying to get familiar with the flow of money through the business and how that worked and so forth. So manufacturing was where I wanted to go ultimately, plant management, and within about a year, I started to move into that direction.
You went through operations, I think, plant manager and things like that. That's where your jobs.
Plant manager, and then plant manager, and then direct, like the COO, operations manager.
You touched a little bit on the anchovy paste. I have visited your company several times, and I've seen that little operation. That was like something you guys started, 30 years ago?
Well, it spawned out of the importing days. We were importing that product and fillets as well and reselling them. And then my dad got a call from one of the major salad dressing producers one day and said, I have a supplier that just told me they're not going to make it anymore. I'm desperate. I see you listed. And long story short, it's one of the big food companies that starts with a K. We started producing it here, and ever since. So that's 50-some years ago.
What else do we use the anchovy paste for besides salad dressing?
It goes into Caesar dressing. It goes into some sauces, certainly into Worcestershire sauce. It's a big ingredient in that. It provides umami flavor, basically, not fish flavor, but
yes,
umami, a little bit of a kick. So
yeah,
it's a very savory flavor, really.
That was a new word for me a little while ago.
Umami.
The umami, because I thought it was a thing, and I thought I'd look it up today, and it's not a thing. It's not like an actual thing. It's a flavor. What do they say? It's the fifth flavor.
The flavor sense. Is that right? Right. There's sweet, salty, savory, and
I couldn't remember the fourth one.
Yeah, and then umami.
Yeah.
Which is really an enhancement to savory. Yeah.
And I don't think a lot of people knew anchovies were in Worcestershire, because people would probably tell you that they don't like it, but that's what's in there.
Yeah. Well, people think about anchovies on pizza, and that's a whole different ball game. Still umami, but you're going to get a lot of fish from that.
So how do you make anchovy paste? And I don't mean the trade secrets. I mean, just how do you make anchovy paste?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest parts of that is the IP or the understanding of what you're buying as far as the raw material, where you're getting it from, how it's cured, because that's really where the flavors develop is in the fermentation process. And so, we're getting most of our anchovies from South America now. Before that, it was Europe, Spain, Portugal.
Okay.
They've kind of fished themselves out, so they're a net exporter or net importer, actually. And so we go down to South America, Mar del Plata area, and we contract for the anchovies, which then have to be caught, cured for about 8 months before you can use them. So the planning cycle is pretty long, as far as, what you're going to need 8 months from now, People don't know what they're going to be doing 8 months from now. And it's a long, a little bit risky, but we have a lot of customers, and we take that risk on their behalf because we don't want them to be caught short.
Now, do they come to you raw, or do they come to you already cured and fermented?
They're cured and fermented. They're ready for further processing, which is usually to remove some excess salt from them, and then would fillet them or can them or grind them into a paste. And so that's what we do. We don't do any filleting. So we make a paste from the raw material and standardize salt and moisture, and for the spec that we're looking to get for whatever customer, and that's it.
Do you do the powder stew also?
The powdered anchovy?
The anchovy powder, do you do that?
We do. That's a spray-dried product that we also have done outside. So we contract with somebody to do the spray drying.
So is there much competition in the anchovy paste world?
There's some. There's some from Europe. There's also some in the States. We like to think that we do a good job, and we've earned, the customers that we have. And, everybody needs to have some second sources. So you're never going to be probably the only one.
Talk about some of the product line that Sokol has, because I have visited there and both times was amazed at how much it's changed. It evolves through the years.
Yeah, so we're out of importing and redistributing. Anything we import is for our own ingredient use, and we're sweet to savory. So we're making icings that are going into cookie decorating kits, maybe in a pouch, all the way through to savory contract manufacturing for some of the largest Asian sauce companies in the world. So, and everything in between, ice cream ingredients, caramels, chocolates, fruit preps, things like that. We have, I think to the last count, we have about 9 HACCP plans, which is, basically your hazard analysis on the different products you're making. So that, a lot of companies have 2 or 1. We do a lot of different things here. Nut butters, so we have a lot of allergen management programs that we have to follow. And knock on wood, we've been real successful doing that, and our customers are comfortable with what we're doing.
Yeah. What kind of nut butters do you make now?
Well, almond, peanut butter. They're typically on the not the run of the mill, but more the enhanced versions, higher protein, higher additives for nutrition, to up the game a little bit on protein and the nutrition part of it.
Do you make cashew and walnut?
We do a little bit with those for some fillings, but mostly peanut butter and almond.
I don't know if you realize this, but there's some people who are allergic to peanut butter, but they're not allergic to walnuts.
That's right.
And so my grandson is one of them.
Is that right?
He eats walnut butter like some people eat pudding.
That's good stuff.
He just eats it by the spoonful. Did you ever taste it?
I'm sure I've had it. Yeah.
I like peanut butter. I like cashew. I like almond, walnut, and I love walnuts. You put walnuts in the chocolate chip cookies, I'm happy, but I tasted the walnut, and that is the most awful tasting thing I've ever tasted.
Is it too bitter for you? Too bitter?
Yeah, I think it tastes like dirt to me. It has that earthy, dirty, and he eats it by the spoonful because we can't have peanut butter near him. And I don't think we can do almonds yet.
Some of my grandkids eat dirt and they don't seem to mind. So.
Well, yeah, I think he would too, but not me. But he eats the walnut butter. It's expensive. It's an expensive thing to eat. He's also allergic to flaxseed.
No, really? That's interesting.
Yes. And, well, the allergy doctor said that that's becoming up more and more with kids. Because when you and I were growing up, there was no flaxseed in anything.
There was no flaxseed.
No, you didn't have flaxseed in your bread or in your chips or your tortillas we didn't even do tortillas. Didn't have all those things. And now they're putting in flaxseed in everything. And they're not listing it on the label.
No, that's a no. Yeah.
It's like it falls in that less than 2%, so they call it a spice.
Yeah, but if it's an allergen, you've got to know.
Well, it hasn't hit the top 10 yet.
Right.
So, it's like there's some kids out there allergic to all kinds of things that aren't even on labels. But yeah, we've been having a fun time with that. It's like, I don't want to say it's allergies might be the wrong word because he doesn't get hives. He doesn't get swelling.
How did you find out?
You have those pouches the kids eat, the little fruit pouches, and the ones from Aldi are a little bit more interesting. They'll have like 3 fruits and yogurt or 3 fruits and flaxseed. So we gave him the one with flaxseed, and he instantly got sick, like for 2 hours.
How about in the peanuts? How did you find out?
He got the red mouth, swollen eyes, the nose.
Yeah.
Like you could tell he was having a reaction to that one.
Right.
So now he's been tested. He's only 20 months old, but he's been tested for all this stuff. And they said his flaxseed's so far off the chart that they won't even try to test him for it because they're afraid he'll just instantly get sick in the office.
Yeah.
The peanut butter he's just as allergic to. The eggs are getting better.
Yeah, so some of it they can outgrow, right?
Yes. And they don't know about flaxseed. They said this is a new one for them. They don't have a lot of evidence of that because people didn't put flaxseed in stuff, especially for kids. But we have to stay away from multigrain breads that just say multigrain because there's probably flaxseed, chips and stuff. Now, we haven't found him to be and that's why I said allergies are probably the wrong thing because he gets sick, like throws up and stuff. So but if I eat something that has flax seeds and I touch him, he has no reaction. It's only if he eats it.
Right.
But peanuts and peanut butter and things like that, we all try not to eat any of that or touch any of that if he's in the house.
Right.
I have another granddaughter who she loves babies. So when he's around, she's always like, I ate some peanut butter. I'll brush my teeth. I'll wash my lips. I'll wash my hands. And she practically takes a whole bath just so she could play with him if she ate peanut butter. And she does. And she's so funny because she's washing her mouth and her lips. And
all worried about
everything. Yeah. Oh, yeah. She's very worried that she might make him sick. But she does that. But the rest of us, we just stay away. Like if I think I ate peanuts today in any way, shape, or form, I won't even give him a kiss or anything. I just wait. But the flaxseed was a real shocker.
First one I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think you're going to hear more, and people are going to have to start paying attention. But it's like my daughter asked me one day. She said, "Mom, did you give us avocados when we were babies?" I said, "No, there were no avocados in the United States when you were a baby." I mean, I was probably in my late 20s before they really started importing those to the United States.
Right.
And I didn't give babies avocados.
No.
That wasn't something we did. So flaxseed's another one of those that we just didn't give it to people. But I know that you, when I've been to your company, you've made things like, my favorite was Melba sauce.
Right. And we still do that.
You do? Oh, that is my absolute favorite.
That's a good one.
Yes. Somebody bought me some. My daughter-in-law bought me a jar of it not too long ago. She goes, "I know you love this. I know it's yours. Same brand, everything, same jar." She bought it for me and gave it to me. Now, it's something like... If
you go to a restaurant that claims, one of their claims to fame is a bloomin' onion, and you get their New York cheesecake, it has that on it. So comes from here.
Oh, well, I have my own. And anyways, I grew raspberries and I try to make my own It's not quite as good, but because I don't have the right blend.
It's black and red, yeah.
I know. That's what I didn't have. I just made it with red. But anyways, now something like that, do you manufacture that year round, or do you do like 6 months run and then come back and do it again?
It's year round. Yeah, it's year round. The raw material is frozen IQF usually, or frozen straight pack. So when it's harvested, it's frozen immediately, and then you can use it when you need it, essentially, to keep the inventory down.
And I noticed one time I was there, you were doing marshmallow fluff.
Right.
Do you still do that?
We don't. We exited that as part of some of the a different strategy going forward over the last couple of years. We went through a process of they call SKU rationalization, where we looked at all the different things that we were doing and decided which ones we're going to go forward with and which ones we're not. And so we took out about 110 items, I think it was.
Wow.
And became a much more profitable company as a result. But it's one of those things, you do things over time, and something maybe was $1 million or £1 million, and when you started, and 10 years later it's a fraction of that, and you're still holding on, and it doesn't work. And so we kind of went through that process, and that was one of them. But it's still alive. We actually sold it to one of the customers that we had on that, and they continue to make it the private label version. So,
how much do the consumers' tastes and the trends out there going on impact your decision on products?
Quite a bit. We actually, in the last 2 years, started using some tools out there that look at the trends of, I think it's a couple thousand restaurant menu. So restaurants that are participating are feeding into this data what people are liking on their menus as they kind of push the envelope. And so you can kind of see the trending going on of what's like. And so we try to get ahead of that a little bit, and then use that data with our customers and say, look, here's what's trending now. 6 months from now, consumers are going to want this in the stores because they like it at the restaurants, and onward we go. So it's really powerful information.
What about during COVID? I would say that I know people went back home and decided to make, obviously they had to make their own food if they didn't order out, but also everybody started baking again.
Yeah, I mean, there was certainly a higher demand on some of the products at that time, during that time. And then there was also just a really difficult time that everybody had in our industry getting certain types of packaging, and anything that came from overseas was really rough. And, as a consumer, you probably noticed package changes at the store. Things that used to be in a certain glass jar all of a sudden were in plastic or something else, and it was a real difficult time. Keeping everybody safe and continuing to supply our customers.
Did you have any products that you couldn't make during COVID?
Not where we had to completely discontinue them, but there were periods of time where, for instance, we get a lot of pineapple out of Thailand, like a lot of people do. And so trying to get a product from there, when the ships couldn't get through the port, if you remember some of the stories of how many weeks the ships were sitting out there waiting to get unloaded. And in the meantime, we're waiting for the pineapple, and our customers waiting for their finished product. And it was difficult.
Well, especially some of these foods probably got rotten while waiting for them.
Yeah, well, that if it's fresh, some of it is already processed in Thailand and shelf stable or refrigerated, frozen, whatever. But yeah, the fresh produce for sure. Can't sit.
Did you get your anchovies during COVID?
We did. We've always been concerned about having it here. So when it's ready, once the curing process is done, we get that product here as fast as we can and make sure it's stateside. So, and the impact from South America wasn't quite as difficult as it was on the West Coast from Asia. So, and we're getting our anchovies through ports on the East Coast.
What do most consumers misunderstand about importing, since you've been doing a lot of that?
It's an interesting question. I would say maybe sometimes quality is assumed either good or bad based on where it's coming from, and that based on a country or that type of origin. That's not necessarily true. I mean, we have to dive into who the processor is and how they manage their quality programs and safety programs. And so if it says it's from Denmark, it doesn't necessarily make it the world's best chocolate. It could be, you know. I would say that's probably, it's imported product of Denmark, or product of Germany or wherever. What does that mean to anybody? So we have to kind of look under the hood a little bit more.
Do you think most people assume if it's made somewhere else, it's not as good as it is in the United States or not as safe?
I think it depends what it is. Yeah.
I didn't know you got pineapple from Thailand. I'm sorry. I would have assumed it was Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii, probably not. Hawaii's probably a net importer of pineapple, would be my guess.
Really?
Yeah. They used to be big with that and sugar, even sugar, no sugar from there anymore. If they have any, it's consumed there, I think.
Tell me some success stories. It could be around products or whatever, some things that you were like, I can't even believe we did this. This is amazing. We know anchovy paste was a success story. But what other interesting stories?
I was thinking about that earlier. I think for me in my time here, and when I was really acutely aware of the business and what we did. In high school, I remember probably sophomore, junior year coming here because my dad, we had gotten a contract to produce a hot fudge topping and something new for the company. And so we were doing some of the development and trial work at night. And I would come over with a couple of buddies of mine and we'd make a little extra money and help on the line since the day people needed to go home. And it turned into a relationship that we still have today. So that's now 48 years or something like that. And it grew exponentially about 15 years later when the company that I'm talking about had a catastrophic situation on the West Coast and needed 50 or 60 items transferred to another manufacturer in about a 90-day period. So I was young and just into my plant management, but I really wanted, I really thought that we had an opportunity to do some good things with that. And so I went out there with a couple people from Sokol, and we ended up moving some equipment from there and some people. And within 90 days, we're making pretty much everything that they were making there from here. Initially air freighting some stuff to plants and so forth. We were feeding about 7 different plants that make ice cream, these different ingredients. And so it was really kind of what put us on the map on the value-added manufacturing side, on the liquid side. It gave us a real jump start, if you will, towards that end, which is our biggest business now.
That's wonderful. So any other ones? Any other surprises that you took on and they turned out good? Yeah,
I mean, I think what I just talked about was on the rationalization side of things for me was really difficult, and because I've always been about trying to grow the business, and sometimes you have to walk before you run and take smaller opportunities on to try to grow them and grow relationships, and so you never want to let go of those things, and yet sometimes it's the best thing to do is to say, okay, this isn't the best, the best thing for Sokol at this point in time, so we need to divest ourselves. And so going through that process, what surprised me was how powerful it was from a growth standpoint, financial standpoint. You lose track of the energy that's going into all of those things that you're doing. 109 different products with different customers, and the churning that's going on to maintain all of that is stunting your growth a little bit. And so you look at that and say, we need to, and you see big companies do that, divest divisions of companies, and so they can focus somewhere. One of the famous stories I remember reading about was, I think it was Kimberly Clark brought in a new CEO, and they were basic in paper mills, and that was really their business. And the hardcore board members and investors were, that's what they were used to. And they were developing value-added products, one of which was diapers like Pampers and things like that. And this new CEO came in, and they weren't really making the inroads in those value-added consumer products that they thought they should, or he thought they should, and he thought it was because they were too enamored with and in paying too much attention to the mills, to the paper production. So he suggested to the board that they sell it, that they sell the mills, which was Kimberly-Clark, and they ended up doing it, and that company took off after that, and just focused on the retail and value added, and so it's along the same lines. You can't focus on too many things at the same time.
Did you ever get emotionally involved in a product that you're like, I mean, you're not making any money, and you love the customer, and you just keep making it?
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's where you need good people around you to, who may not have that, share that same, emotional attachment to it, to say, hey, here's what's really going on. So, don't make it about you. It's got to be about the company and what's good for everybody.
Do you have any things that happened where you're saying, we should not have done that, and if I could go back again, we wouldn't do it, or nobody should try this? They don't have to be catastrophic mistakes, but
that's a bigger book than the good one. Yeah. So, but you have to risk. I mean, you have to look at things and take calculated risks to see where they're going. I mean, if you don't get on the road, you have no chance, and to see where it goes. And so we have many stories along the way of how one decision has led to 5 or 6 others that you never thought in your wildest dreams would be a part of your business. So,
all right, do you got a story for me though? If you got lots of stories, give me a story of something that you did and you were like, oh, that was a lesson. That was worth the cost of the education.
You mean in a negative way?
Yeah, like you did something and you're like, going forward, that learning that mistake helped you so much. It's like almost like it's a good thing you had that mistake.
Yeah, I think I was trying to solve a problem for a customer that was buying cinnamon from us, and back when we were doing more of the importing and dry, we did do a little value added, and thought that I could solve this problem with dusting for them in their plant. It was a large commercial bakery, national. And so I said, we just need to get a blender and get some oil on this stuff so it doesn't dust all over the place. And after about 6 months of trial and error, we still couldn't get it to work, and decided that we needed to stay focused on what we were good at, and that wasn't one of them. So, and almost cost us the customer at the end of the day.
Did it cost you a lot of money that 6 months?
Sure, a lot of batches going down the tubes.
On the flip side, you ever try something that wasn't supposed to work and it was amazing? It was like, I can't, like everyone has that accidental mix these two things together and made, this rubber cement that they didn't know was going to happen. So did you have anything that you did that you was like, wow, good thing we messed that up?
There's a few things like that, some of which I probably can't talk about exactly, but, they're still commercialized and with our customers. Any
old ones? Any old stories that are already out there?
Not the ones that come to mind exactly, but the anchovy paste was another one that when I got here, I had been exposed to that as a young person working in there, and swore to myself if I ever had anything to do with the business that the process would be changed. Like it was too antiquated, it was too artsy, and too slow, and all these things. So I would sit up at night and draw different process changes and things. And when I finally had some ability to change things around here, I was able to put a new system in there and improve the quality and improve the throughput and safety for people.
That's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to tell me you spent all that time on it and found out that the old way, artsy way, was the best way.
Yeah,
it wasn't.
It was good though. It was still good, but it took it. You couldn't change. You couldn't have anybody go on vacation. Because then the artist just left the building, and now you've got to wait for them to come back. So
I know that one of the times when I met with you, that you said education was really, really important to you. Not only your own education, but to educate your employees, and you used to offer them the opportunity to go back to school. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, we do. We required and paid for in my time here 40 hours of continuous improvement minimum, and so they could pick from a lot of different things. But the overarching part of that was, we wanted people to get better at what they were doing and to feel good about themselves, to advance themselves. And I could tell you story after story about how people that have left here have left our business in better shape than when they started, because they're motivated a little bit more by that than just getting a paycheck. But they're also, when they leave here, whether it's because we need to make a change, not because of performance, but maybe we're divesting part of our business, they go off to another part of their career and do just fine and go to the next level because they've gotten some training. And I've had recently even some folks come back. I've gotten back in touch with them since I've left at the day-to-day, and they said, I'm at this job or that job, and everybody keeps asking me how I know this stuff and how do you know how to do that? And we'll tell them, because I got good training at Sokol, I got good education there. I was able to go back to school. And so that, that was fulfilling for me to hear that. And that's really what it's for. So that, if someone were to leave here, they leave here in a better career position than when they started.
Now that's interesting, because most companies or owners would probably not share that because they don't want people to leave. They want to keep them.
We were interviewing right now. That's the unsaid that goes along with that, is that, we want you to come on board. You'll be and stay here the rest of your life. It's unrealistic, probably, right? For most people, for a lot of different reasons. Life changes and you got to move, whatever it is, and so you want to spend the time that you have together, the best you can, which is they help you improve your business, you invest in them, and it's a win-win. We had a situation recently with another person that went kind of along with a divestiture of part of our business, and they the new company absolutely wanted this person to come with them, and it's a great career move for her. And it's just those are good moves. Those are win-wins.
Right. It is interesting, because to make your company someplace people want to come, you have these kinds of benefits.
Yep.
But you can't expect those people to use the benefits, and then when they improve themselves, that they might not go look somewhere else.
Yep, right. And we just had two more senior people in the last 3 years, I guess it was, graduate from top 4 MBA schools and University of Chicago. So it's everything in between. Certificate programs, whatever it is.
But I can't imagine that it doesn't build loyalty too.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Stay here where they took care of me, help me with my education, things like that.
But there's also this part of that conversation, which is that, as you get this education and this experience, we may not have the spot for you to go to the next level when you need to go, when it's time to go. And that's, there's no animosity with that. It's like I said, a win-win when that happens. Just give me more than 2 weeks to find a replacement for that. So.
Do you spend a lot of time, or did you spend a lot of time having people train their own replacement so they could be promoted?
We had a little of that, but it's hard to in those situations. Yeah, they were going to be promoted internally. It's usually the harder one is if someone is leaving. It's you know how that goes. It's not, you just don't have a lot of time.
No, but if they're if somebody says I'd really like to be promoted, and you kind of say, well, to get this promotion, you got to get somebody to take your position, so you better train somebody. Did you do those type of things?
Definitely do that, and that's part of the the way to step up and help someone else do that as well.
I talk to a lot of companies when they're doing hiring, and they don't want to train. They want to hire somebody who can walk in and do the job.
Wow.
They talk about hit the ground running. And I always think that if a person can already do the job, they don't want the job because they're already doing it somewhere else. They want to, I've never had anyone call me up and say, can you find me a job doing exactly what I'm doing?
Right. So I can hit the ground running. And
they say, can you find me a job where I'm going to learn something new, get to do something harder, more responsible, more authority, more something, and obviously make more money too.
There's just so much. There's so much I think, that's missing in that statement, which is, even if it's technical and someone can hit the ground running from a technical standpoint, there's still the whole cultural part of the business that has to be, that you have to integrate someone into before it can really be productive.
I remember you said something to me one time. You were looking at hiring somebody, and they felt that they didn't have all the qualifications. They felt that the candidate did. And you said to me, which I reiterated to them, you said, well, I would rather you come here and learn it than you learn it somewhere else and I hire you 5 years from now.
You're right.
Because we could spend the next 5 years having you learn it here.
Right.
And I always remember that, and you probably don't know this, but I'd repeat that to people. I'd say, don't you want to train this person in how you do things and let them learn while they work for you? And even go as far as saying, as I said to this other person, I said, he's going to pay you while you learn how to do this job. Right. Instead of college where you pay for them to teach you the job or teach you the information.
Right.
And it's so funny how I get so many companies that they're like, oh, that sounds nice, but no, we want to make sure they already know how to do it before they get here.
Interesting. Yeah.
I've fought with that for years.
Yeah. If you're looking for another way, maybe have your mind open to other ways to do certain things. Maybe you're stuck in kind of the way you're doing it, and maybe there's another way that's better, and you get exposed to that through a new employee that has a different experience. That's can be powerful too.
Yeah. But you can't do every job like this. I ran into a company once, and they were telling me what they wanted. And I said, well, why don't we teach someone this? I mean, you already know how to do it. You're running your whole company on this. And they actually looked at me and said, no, that's the problem. We don't know what we're doing.
Yeah. Right.
we need to buy experience. I went, okay. All right, I'm on board with you on that one. If you have to buy experience, we'll go find somebody. But most people don't want to take a job that they already can do, unless they're in charge.
Yeah, I mean, that would be the comfortable play. But what you're really looking for is someone that wants to challenge himself. And
people bring different experiences. I can see somebody coming and saying that they're qualified in other things, and they're going to teach us those while we teach them the other parts.
Yeah. Sure.
But to come ready-made, just plug and play.
I mean, to me, that's like maybe an account temp or something. That you just need someone to come in and process basic, debits and credits. But other than that, you want someone that can come in and be, once they learn, be innovative and bring something new.
You have in the last year chosen to retire.
Mm-hmm.
And so what things came together to make it the perfect time to sell Sokol?
A little bit of a family, planning, transitional planning that came into play in the thinking inside our family over the last 4 or 5 years. Definitely down the road for me, I have 4 children, 2 in the business right now. That have their own ideas of how things can go, and I have a lot of confidence in them. And so, there was an opportunity to kind of recapitalize the business and give us a way to, my wife and I, a way to to spend some time away from the day to day and spend a little bit more time with kids and lots of grandkids. So that was part of it. And then it was also, I think the business needed to look at some different, a different approach to some of the things. We for the first time have a non-family president. He was a real dynamic gentleman and doing a great job. He's been here a little over a year now. That we hired last year ago, September. And then my son, one of my sons is really the chairman of the company, not involved day to day per se. And then my youngest son is the COO, working directly with the new president.
Your daughter's left. She's not doing the marketing anymore.
But she left, and then I have one other daughter who never really was in the day to day of the business. But so it's exciting. I mean, different things. So I'm still involved. I talk to my kids every day, so getting a little bit of this, but I'm not involved in decision making outside of what a board member would do for the most part.
So this is different than like your father. Your father rode this all the way to pretty much the end of his life.
Yeah, although he, once I became president, he was able to, outside of, we didn't do an ownership transaction other than internally within the family. We didn't bring any outside capital in, but he was able to take some time off and leave me alone to run the business. So.
Yeah, but he didn't do. I mean, he was a lot older when he retired, wasn't he?
He was, yeah. When he admitted to that he was retired.
Because you have the first owner, and he died, so he was working right up to the day he died. Then the next one, he did it too. And really, your grandmother got a little bit out of it by waiting until your dad was ready. But this was kind of like, I run into so many owners of companies, and I'm talking about companies your size and bigger, where the president CEO is 85 years old.
Yeah,
he's still working,
and I think that can work. I mean, it wasn't what I wanted, but I also think that in retrospect now, even after the short period that we've been in this mode, it was the right thing to do. There's some new ideas and some new energy, and you do get kind of I mean, you talk to somebody, maybe your mom or your dad, and you hear the same story, and I catch myself telling that same story, like back in the day, and this is the way we did it, and and so you start to think, hey, you know what, there's some other ways to do these things, and let's let another generation have at it. And they're doing a great job.
What did you learn from your transition from your taking over for your dad that you applied to this transition with your son?
Yeah, I think, in fact, I heard from one of them the opposite. So the transition with my dad and I was not as planned as it should have been, and defined timelines and things like that. And who's doing what when. So there was a little bit of, I'm gone for 6 months and all of a sudden I'm back, even though I'm not back as president. But here's why I think we should do these things. Wait a minute, lots happened in the last 6 months. So it was that kind of stuff. And with my kids, we made that transition really quick and on purpose. And I'm glad to be in the building today, but I'm on purpose don't come here very often because it needs to be. There's a lot of muscle memory around, and so it needs to be Sean's show now, and Tim and Michael's, and so I'm here at board meetings and here when they need me for certain things that I remember how to do. But
so they're not giving you any pet projects to take on?
Oh, there's a few. Yeah, there's a few.
Oh, okay.
I've got one right after our call today. So.
Oh, that's good. I mean, they're still making phone calls like, this came up. Do you have any advice for us?
There's a lot of that. Yeah, there's still some of that. There's some unique things, like anchovies, one of them. There's I got involved in that and sourcing and a lot of the quality stuff. So that's not something everybody walks in the building with knowledge of. So. You have to transfer that. So that's part of it. And then we're looking for, growth opportunities through acquisition. So I'm talking to other owners like I was a year ago about some of the benefits and why they might want to think about, selling their company and joining, Sokol on a merger or acquisition.
What's the best thing about this transition for you?
Personally, I think it's I miss the people. I don't miss some of the day-to-day noise, I guess, from a headspace standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And the pandemic drove that to another level, for sure. So I love problem solving, but, getting the COVID report every morning at 6 a.m. as to who's sick and who's not, and and what shipments not coming in, and all those things. It was difficult. It was a difficult time, but I promised everybody we would stay in business and I would protect their livelihood, and we were able to do that.
I heard this story. I don't know if it's true, so you can tell me if it's not. That, of course, it was very quick with COVID. It was like one day we're all normal, the next day all the restaurants are closed.
Right.
That you told some of the restaurant owners, send your employees over here, we'll put them to work so they won't lose money. Is that true?
Absolutely. We were looking for, we were lucky to get on some local television, and, that we had positions open, and, bring your people here. There was a company down the street that, a couple doors away, that made high end desserts and hors d'oeuvres for restaurants and hotels. That was their entire business, and so they had food production people that now had no jobs because they weren't buying any of their products. So we were able to work out some things like that to fill in the gaps for us and for them.
Now, once they instituted all that unemployment for everybody, did you lose those people, or were you able to keep them until they were ready to go back to their own company?
Well, they went back there. They probably, I don't think there was much of a gap for most of them. We were able to, because their companies also were trying to figure out, where do we go from here? We actually jumped into making hand sanitizer.
Yeah.
I don't regret that. It wasn't it was a real, how do you say it, a distraction, if you will, to try to get that to go. And we partnered with a distillery in Northern Illinois, and we made it go. I mean, we actually sold quite a bit of it, and then it very quickly just disappeared. As we all were told that was a good thing to do, but then it really didn't. It wasn't really preventing COVID. And
so, what did you know about hand sanitizers to make it?
Not a whole lot, but we had the expertise in packaging that was necessary to put the little packets together. So we partnered with someone that had that knowledge that was making sanitizer. It was a distillery up in they were making spirits like vodka. It was a family operation, and partnered with them, and we were able to make some number of packets, quite a few million.
What kind of were you making? Were you making like little tear open ones, or were you making little bottles, or what were you doing?
No, it was a little tear open, single dose.
Yeah, it is amazing. We were told to wash our hands like 100 times a day, and now we probably don't do it anymore.
That, and the masks and all of that. So
yeah, we were always told that germs were good for you, and then we were told germs weren't good for you.
I see my grandkids, struggling with different, colds coming back from school, and it just seems like a lot to me. And but maybe because I have too many, or have a lot. But I think it's because they had masks on for 2 years. I don't know.
Well, it was interesting to not have any colds around for 2 years.
Yeah.
I actually said to my husband at the time, I said, do you realize that we've had the same 2 boxes of Kleenex for the last year?
Yeah.
We haven't even bought any new Kleenex because nobody got a cold.
No one got the flu.
Yeah, no. And my grandkids were sick this past week and with a cold. And I would never have said this before. I said, don't bring them over here.
Right.
I said, you can't get Grandpa sick because he has to make the turkey next week.
That's right.
I said, if you get him sick, there'll be no Thanksgiving because I don't know how to make the turkey. So, yeah, we didn't, it was very interesting though at the time. Now, did your grandchildren know about COVID? They
know about it. They know, they know a little bit. The older ones know a little bit about it. I was amazed that we were able to get the youngest ones that needed to wear masks, like in airplanes and places like that, to put them, get a 2-year-old to keep one of those on, but they did.
Now, we didn't travel with ours or anything. They didn't go anywhere. And we were a good year into it. And I realized that my grandchildren knew nothing about COVID.
Yeah.
They were homeschooled, first of all. So they didn't know school was canceled.
Oh, I see. Right.
Yeah, and they didn't watch TV news. Like, there was no news in their house. Never has been. I don't think my grandchildren have ever seen a news show, ever. They only watch, educational TV or Netflix or whatever. So they don't get cable TV. So they didn't know anything about it. So after about a year, they kept hearing that word. And one day they said, well, what is that? And I realized, you have no idea what this is. We have sheltered you completely. They're living, well, they say ignorance is bliss.
Yeah.
Well, my son and his wife didn't want to scare them.
Yeah, right.
They didn't want to hear about the daily death toll.
Right.
Those kind of things. So they didn't talk about it. So the kids, therefore, were never afraid of it. And they knew nothing about it. And none of them ever got it. They said stay in your bubble, with your immediate family. Well, I'm sure you have the same thing. Our bubble was huge. Yeah,
big, right. And they were intermittently going to school, and so you were like, well, now should we get together? The school called and someone's sick, so now, you guys can't come over. Stuff like that.
Yeah, see, we didn't have any of that because the kids didn't go to school. And we were in the middle of renovating a house for my son. So we were together every day, and everybody helping on the house was with us. So our bubble was like 35 people.
Did anybody ever get it?
My husband got it, but not in the traditional sense. And the reason I say that is he was just tired. And I thought that was very odd that the man would get up, get a shower, eat breakfast, and fall asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And after the second day, I said, there's something wrong with you. How can you sleep 20 hours a day?
Right. That was one of the symptoms.
So he went and got tested, and they said he had COVID. And I was like, you got COVID. And this was the second year. So it wasn't the first round of COVID that everybody was really afraid of. And so I went and got tested. And I had zero symptoms, not a thing. And they said I had COVID.
Oh, wow.
And I was like, So we waited 10 days or 14, whatever the limit was. And we were right back to life. He was better. Everybody's, I never got sick. I just tested. And we went right back to everything again. But to our knowledge, nobody in our family tested positive for COVID that we know of. I mean, they were sick sometimes, but nobody went and tested. And my daughter had a baby, and her first child, 11 months later, she was having her second baby, and she did them at home. She didn't do them at the hospital, and she was sick with the second baby, and it was everything, had all the markings of COVID. And she asked her doctor, she said, what do I do? He goes, don't test. He said, don't test. You have the baby at home. Don't worry about it.
Right.
He said, this is the best thing for the baby. He said, it'd be great if you had COVID because then they have all the antibodies.
Yeah, right.
So we're like, okay. So she never tested. And everybody who assisted in the birth had never had COVID. And they never got it after that. So we go, did she have COVID or didn't she? We don't know. We didn't test it. But it was one of those things where Western Pennsylvania, where we live, was not like what you were encountering.
Yeah.
At the height of COVID, where people were dying, at the first year when people were really dying because they didn't know what they were doing. They didn't know what medicines to give them. They didn't know anything. Our death toll was 16. And I know 12 of them weren't COVID. Because in the state of Pennsylvania, they were doing everybody who died during that period was a COVID death, even if it was a car accident, even if it was cancer.
Right. Yeah, they didn't.
So I knew who these people were that died, and several of them were like car accidents or cancer. So
had COVID on the autopsy or whatever.
If people in Chicago or New York that had thousands of deaths, we were sitting around at like 10.
Well, we had our share of cases here, but never anybody that got sick enough that I don't think anybody was one person hospitalized, but came out okay. So
was it really tough for you on the supplier side, getting the ingredients and the packaging and everything?
A nightmare. I mean, they were all, and you understood they were in the same spot, as soon as we hear where the ship is, we'll let you know, and yeah, it just little by little you realized. But we started to find workarounds. We started to not under, to understand that you may not get certain things that you were used to getting. So what do we need to do? I think at the very beginning of the pandemics, like even before 2020, late 2019, when there were some rumblings, or early 2020, we started to buy chemicals, things that we use that come from Asia. We started stocking up pretty good.
Mm-hmm.
We had some inventory of critical raw materials, but the packaging really became the problem for everybody.
One of the things we haven't touched on is that my brother worked there for 12 years. Yeah. And he worked in logistics and warehousing. And he used to be so proud to tell me that he was working in this process they call just in time. Mm-hmm. And he said, we would only order what we need for exactly what we were doing the next week or two. So we would order packaging only when we needed it. So we weren't warehousing all of these ingredients and all this packaging. So when COVID hit, all I could think of is my brother's head would have probably just blown off trying to think about how in the world we went from only order when you need it to now stockpile everything you can get your hands on.
Well, the just-in-time model only works with the when you can depend on the supply. So it's very predictable.
Have things gone back to anywhere close to that now?
I think in some of our supply lines they have. Packaging seemed like it's eased up quite a bit. But there were some businesses, like think about a distributor whose only business is really importing and redistributing glass from Asia. All of a sudden they can't get anything. They can't. What are they supposed to sell? So they devastated some of the businesses for sure. But they seem to be back.
I understand cardboard was another one.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Yep. And then the shifting. What was another one that some of the plastic and glass availability on the supply lines in the supply chain in the United States were being eaten alive by the brown glass, which I guess is alcohol. So they started to drink a lot more during COVID.
I can see why.
And then the vials that we needed for the vaccines.
Yeah. Now you bring up an interesting thing. One of your products that I think it's still around, it looked really good, was the Jim Beam sauces. Yeah, you still have those?
We do for the moment. That might be one of the things that we're looking at as a strategic change. But
they've been successful.
It has been. Yeah, it's been about I think we're probably about 7 or 8 years into the license with that. Yeah.
I don't know if you had this, but during COVID here, you could drive to a bar and get a mixed drink and take it home with you.
And take it home. Yeah.
So you could drive home with an open bottle.
Yeah.
You could drive over to the bar and get two Bloody Marys or 2 Long Island iced teas and drive home.
Yeah. Curbside.
They allowed that kind of stuff. I just had to laugh. But, I did touch on the fact that my brother worked there. He did say that was his favorite place to work.
Yeah, we loved having Joe. And he knew some of my children. Babysat every once in a while.
You're a family-owned company, family-run company, but I think people felt like they were part of the family too.
I think so, for sure.
Do you have some employees that have been there for like their whole career, like some huge milestones?
I think there's still one that was longer than me that's here. So he's still here.
What do they do? What's their job?
He actually is he worked in manufacturing for a long time. He's now one of the key people to train new employees. So all the initial takes about 3 or 4 months to get through everything to where you can kind of be left alone from a safety and food safety standpoint. So he does all the training and then the annual training. Really important job. He was a teacher in his very early life, and then came to Sokol. So what is that? I don't know, 40-something years ago.
Talk a little bit about your food safety. You had in the beginning, you had said you have all these HACCP programs, and I'm not sure. I mean, I've mentioned this to you before. Some people listening to this podcast have no idea what HACCP is and why you'd have so many.
Yeah, it really is the critical control points of any process from a food safety standpoint. So depending on what you're running, those control points are different. And so if you're making the same thing every day, you have one HACCP plan. If you make a lot of different things that have different attributes from the standpoint of food safety, then you have to have different HACCP plans. And everybody has to be trained on all of those and understand them. They have to be reviewed, constantly for improvement and efficacy and so forth. So it's complex, and it was one of the things that we looked at when we did a little bit of the divesting and rationalization. Was that's really complex. We have a HACCP plan for a line that only runs 2 times a year. Do we really want to be doing that? So that was part of it. But we've always put that first and foremost, and spent a lot of time, effort, money, and training employees for their knowledge on food safety. I'd like to think above and beyond what's required, and hopefully it pays off.
What's your most difficult product in regards to food safety?
You would probably think anchovy, but it's there are some things that you have to watch out for there. But it's got such a high salt content that it's very safe.
Mm-hmm.
Low pH products that are susceptible to pathogen growth, if you don't do things right, are the most critical and challenging.
Like what? What are those?
Well, it would be any kind of like a cream sauce, let's say, or something that is not acidic. If you tried to acidify it, it wouldn't taste very good. So those are you have to watch your fill temperatures, your pasteurization temperatures, and then refrigeration afterwards, usually. So, and you got to get down below 40 degrees in a really short period of time.
A lot of people probably don't realize that cross-contamination is a big deal. So your nut butters can't go touch something else.
Yep. So you do a lot of training on cleaning. We have programs in place to validate that cleaning, to make sure that after we're done, that there's no residual proteins from peanut or almond it's all of them. We have really every allergen here.
You do?
In the building. Yep.
So now you probably have flaxseed too.
Yeah, well, I'm going to go look at that when we're done, because I know.
Yeah. So I understand that even if a mechanic would work on the line for the nut butters, he can't take that same equipment and go work on the line for something else.
So you go back to training. So your mechanic has to be just as knowledgeable about food safety and cross-contamination as anybody that's involved in cooking or compounding or filling. And so food safety for maintenance is extremely important, because those are usually kind of a non-standard occurrences, not something that you do every day. Tear a pump apart and put it back together because it has to be rebuilt. And all the way down to people that understand that what they bring in for lunch from home also could play a part in, and what's in your vending machine in your lunchroom. You can't have payday peanut butter bars in there.
So they can't bring peanut butter to work?
Well, if they do, they have to, we don't say you can't, but they have to be trained. They have to understand that, you've got to wash your hands. You've got to clean up after yourself. You've got to make sure that never leaves the lunchroom and goes home with you. So
I was in a food plant once where all these people had different colored uniforms on.
Yeah.
And it almost looked like a team sport, because they all had different color uniforms on. And I asked them, I said, what's the different colors for? And they said, well, you're not allowed out of your area. And if we see a blue person over in the green area, where the green people are, they can get in trouble.
It's a good way to manage that. Yeah. The traffic is important. Yeah.
Can't go visit your friends. Blue can't go visit green or go in yellow. And the company was making ready-to-eat salads, not, like ham salad, macaroni salad. And those things are just full of pathogens. And And they didn't want to cross-contamination between any cooked products and raw products. So you weren't allowed to walk into other rooms, and they actually had certain hallways. So only blue people could go down that hallway, or only yellow people could go down.
It really can get complex. I mean,
what have you seen change in food safety from the time that you started, when you were just 14 or 18 to now?
I think the biggest part is what we're talking about now, is the allergen, the allergen management requirements that are there now, are here now. Everything from labeling to managing it in your facility, that didn't exist, 25 years ago. And so it becomes real important to, we're looking at some product lines now because they have the potential for, maybe they're peanut-based or almond-based or nut-based, an allergen that, we may or may not want to continue to run on dedicated, and maybe move it to a dedicated line, because of the risk of it and the amount of time we have to spend cleaning and so forth. So something you didn't have to think about 25 years ago, really.
It is amazing, because I don't think the general public realizes how safe our food is.
Yeah, I would agree.
They only see the mistakes, the bad press.
Yeah, and the hyper plants are part of that. If you take, I don't know, salad. There's a lot of salad, like fresh vegetable recalls and things, because it's being processed in these, high volume, processing facilities. And I don't know how many years ago, but years ago it was probably more regional, smaller, farms and processors. So if there was an issue, it was limited. It was limited to a geographic area that was within 100 miles of wherever that was. Now it's nationwide. You have a processor in California that ships everywhere under 5 different labels. So when there's a recall, it makes the national news for sure.
Well, some things like that salad, that ready-to-eat salad, that's inherently, difficult. But they do a good job. I don't know if they've ever had a recall. I don't think people realize how blessed they are that these employees take care of all of these things and the packaging.
Okay.
I remember my grandmother, this is years and years ago, I was just a little kid. She found something, and I cannot remember. I'm going to have to ask my mom what it was in her bread, from Wonder, her Wonder bread. And I think it was something like a mouse or a finger or something. And she called the company, and they came over, apologized, asked for the loaf of bread back. She gave it to them and asked what could they do for her. And she said, I just need another loaf of bread. And they were like, well, we'll give you dinner rolls and bread and hot dog buns. And they gave her all this stuff. And she's like, I don't need all this. But she took like the 5 or 6 that they gave her,
right,
and away they went. It did not make national news. She did not call the press. She did not put it on the internet, obviously, because there was none.
Yeah, now it can get around, and sometimes it's necessary. You want to keep people safe, so they should know, if there's a systemic problem of some kind.
Yes, that, but a one-time event.
No, right.
Is not, because we don't even know who put that in that bag or how that got there. I don't know anything about it. But yeah, I think the internet has placed a lot of pressure. The consumers place pressure on the companies, sometimes warranted and sometimes not, to perform all these safety checks that, that have risen it to a whole new level, because they're watching you every step that you take, warranted or unwarranted.
And most of what you see is out of extreme caution. These recalls take place, and yet there's probably not a lot of hard fact that there's anything wrong with any of it. But they just want to make sure, and time is of the essence. So let's get it back. And
I learned the other day from talking to somebody in the pet food industry that pet food is full of salmonella. But it doesn't hurt the animals.
Right.
Not at all. So when people yell, the food's killing my dog, they're like, no, it's not. Because salmonella doesn't hurt dogs. It only hurts humans. So their food safety program is for the person who's not even consuming the product.
Right.
It's for the person who's buying it, using it, pouring it out of the bag or whatever. And I thought that was interesting. People get all whipped up. Something's happening and you're like, that's not possible. The other thing I did want to ask you about is I know that Sokol, besides being concerned about educating the employees and everything, keeping them engaged, that you guys do some fun activities and some team building there. Well, have you been able to revamp that since COVID? Because I'm sure you couldn't get together for a softball game during COVID.
Yeah, I think that's alive and well here. We have some rally cries around different things that the business is working on, and definitely a acknowledgement of monthly employees and that have kind of gone over and above and solving some kind of a problem for us or helping another employee, and they're recognized. And I think that's just the recognition alone is usually more impactful than any monetary reward. But we do both, and then try to do the. I know our HR manager caught me on the way in and said that we were getting ready to. It may sound trivial for some, but we've had a longstanding tradition of around the holidays of giving out hams and turkeys to everybody, and so she was telling she came in. She was just in the cooler, getting the names on all of them, and everybody's all excited to grab theirs before they leave for the short week next week, right? So that's a fun thing to do, and shows our appreciation for everybody. And then a Christmas party coming up on the 15th of December.
And you do things during the summer too, right?
There's other we do picnics, a couple barbecues, usually spring and fall, to keep people engaged, and then again the individual and team recognition I think is a big thing.
How many employees do you have now?
About 85.
Is that number holding steady for the last couple of years, or is that high or low?
It's lower. We were able to, in the rationalization that we did, although we're on the other end of that now, we actually took out a whole second shift. So, and now, as of about a month ago, the second shift is reappearing. So we're in a training mode right now. Some of the managers are actually working at night on the onboarding side of the labor position. So. In fact, my son went out to dinner late last night because he was here till about 9, doing some training.
So you're taking out all of second shift, and we're only producing on one shift?
We were able to condense everything down into one. And you would think that meant a tremendous amount of revenue, but the items that we actually took out were such that they were creating a lot of changeover. So the time that we got back from that by not having to change over, we were able to consolidate onto one shift, and so it became real efficient and very powerful economically for the company.
Was it popular with the employees?
There was obviously some casualties in terms of employment on the second shift, but we were able to keep. We had a lot of temporaries, not that you don't care about them, but we certainly do. But our direct employees, we were able to get most of them, if not all of them, onto the first shift.
I mean, I do know there are people out there who enjoy second or third shift. I mean, they're just inherently those people. But so now you're going to bring back second shift for some things?
Yeah, second shift is back as of about a month ago.
Okay.
So we started, and I think we're now at about 5. We're at 5 days now. Mm-hmm. So we're running. The plant runs 16 hours of basically fill time, uptime, and the balance of they're 10-hour shifts that are staggered. So we're here probably 22 hours.
Most people would know their PepsiCos and Coca-Colas and those companies are highly automated, but I don't think people would realize. You're pretty automated.
Yep, and actually quite a bit more in the last year. Mm-hmm. Part of that was the COVID a situation where, it became really hard to find people, and especially for second shift. And so, handwriting was on the wall. We needed to automate some of the positions where we could, and we did. And so we've got one more project on one of our lines, and then we'll be pretty fully automated.
And then they had to stand 2 feet away from each other anyway. So you had to figure out how to get some of those jobs done without people standing next to each other.
And then the changeover became really, really expensive when you have all those people in the building and you're not running anything. So you just change from one product to another, and it takes a couple hours.
Automation in some ways is great because it makes it easier to make the product more reliable. But then you got to train people on more specialized equipment, and now you kind of have less employees, but you probably pay more for each one.
Yeah, the jobs are better, I think. You can pay more.
As you went back to your oldest employee, or not, I don't know if he's the oldest, but the longest employee there, being your part of your training, having somebody who knows all this and has come up with all the equipment, and he's probably the most valuable person on the place, huh?
Yeah, well, it's a really key position. It's really important, and he leads a team, of people that other managers that are involved with him. But we use some good tools, online tools, and good documentation. So it's efficient, but you got to have someone that has the ownership of it.
If you could go back, now that you know what you know now, and you could go back to maybe your plant manager or your first time you were president, what would you tell yourself then? What was all this stuff that you've learned? What would you do differently?
I would probably, one of the things I would do the same is stay focused on people and, training, the things you can do for them, because I think they get back to the company. You take care of them, you take care of the company. And I think that's extremely valuable and true. I think the focus would be what we've done in the last, 2 or 3 years, where we've really developed a strategy of where we want to go, what channel we want to sell to. I was casting a bigger net, most of my career. So, I think you only have so many resources, only so many hours in a day. So when you dilute that too many ways, it becomes difficult and to grow or be good at, to be great at something. You can be good at a lot of things, but it's hard to be great at something. So that would be more along the lines of, where I would go is a focus. And some of that was difficult just, because of the dynamics of one generation to another, trying to get on the same page and let go of certain things. And I saw it happening with my generation to my children's. And so I recognized, I think, that it was important to kind of let them do what they need to do now.
What was the catalyst to get you to focus and streamline these products? Is there an event or an epiphany or something that made you say, we got to do this?
Yeah, I think it was mostly the people around me with really good, really smart, really good data, being able to put it in front of you in a way that's not, there's nothing elusive about it. Here's the data, here's the hours, here's the time, these are the costs, and here's what we're able to sell it for. And then from the sales side, here's where we think the upside is or not. And really, focus on what's going to be important for the business going forward. Some of the products, when you looked under the hood, we weren't making money on some of them, and yet you thought you were, or you thought you were close, or you thought the margins were better. So we spent a lot of money over the last, in my time here, on data and on software and on the business information systems that allow this to happen. But now we have some really good people, and have had over the years, but now we have a lot of them that are really good at extracting that data, putting it in a form that you can understand, and saying, here's where we need to go. So it makes it a whole lot easier.
Well, I think that says a lot about you, though, because I know a lot of people are afraid of their boss, afraid of the owner. They're not gonna share the bad news.
Yeah, that's bad news. That's bad news.
I know of a company in Chicago, a very big company, It was privately held, and I had made a placement for them, and they didn't pay me, and they didn't pay me, and they didn't pay me, and I was getting a little nervous. It's like, why aren't you paying me? And he finally said, well, the owner says that you did too, if I go and tell them that you filled this job in 2 weeks, I'll get in trouble. And I said, I don't understand. What do you mean? I did a really good job. Why would you get in trouble? He goes, because he'll tell me if it was that easy, I should have done it myself.
Oh, my God.
And I go, but it's not that easy. It's easy for me, who knows what they're doing, not for you, who has no resources to do it. He said, yeah, but if I'm going to get in trouble, so if I wait a few weeks, then he'll think it took it that long. And I said, doesn't he know the person already started? And he said, I'm really afraid to go in and tell him and ask for the money. So I finally said, you have to do this. He did it. So he came back out and he said, okay, I got your check, I'll send it to you. But he told me I'm never allowed to work with you again.
Oh, my gosh.
And I said, why? And he said, because I told you that. He said that if it's that easy, that you're, and he was, of course, saying I was charging too much if it was that easy. But I said, it's not that easy. I spend years learning something that I could do for you in 30 minutes. So that's not where my story was going. But the part of that story was that they were so afraid of him, they wouldn't even take in the invoice. But I can't imagine what else they wouldn't tell him. But later, I wrote a letter to the guy and told him what I basically just told you, is that I spent all these years learning this. I'm an expert in this area. You should be mad if it took me a month or 2 months. You should be excited that it took me, 2 weeks to do this. And I thought he's never gotten this letter. I waited like a month or whatever. And then they called me. They said, I don't know what happened, but he said, we're allowed to work with you again. And I said, oh, he must have got my letter.
Oh, wow.
But I thought, isn't that terrible that you would have somebody that is in control of the company that people are afraid to talk to? So that's why I said it says a lot about you, because they have to come in to you and say, you think we're making a lot of money on this product and we're really actually barely breaking even.
Yeah, I mean, we did some exercises around communication and the idea that everybody has blind spots, that you don't see very clearly, and so you're counting on people around you. If it's your family and your family and your business and your business, to point those things out. Mm-hmm. And it's really good if you can tell them what you think they are. Hey, I'm blind. I know I have a blind spot around this, so watch my back on this. I don't know. There's another graphic that it's an exercise we did where there's a collage that goes up on the screen for 15 seconds, and there's 10 people in the room. Your whole management team's in the room. And then it goes off, and the facilitator asks what everybody saw, and everybody saw something different. I saw the Hershey bar and the baby and something else, and everybody, And so the idea is that if all 10 people chime in, you might get the whole picture. And that's really the case. You can't see everything all the time, so you need people to watch your back.
A group of people are smarter than any of the individuals.
Absolutely.
And but I've always told my employees, that anybody that's worked for me, if you yes me for everything's, oh yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's great. Then I know there's something wrong, because I can't be that brilliant.
Right.
And have every answer to every single thing. If somebody's not saying no, or did you ever try this, then there's a problem.
Like, what are you not telling me? What do you know?
Yeah. And I would assume that there's managers or owners of companies out there who probably think opposite of what I'm saying. They're like, if anybody dares defy me, they're, out of here.
I really don't know how you can be successful that way unless you have a patent on something no one else has or something.
Or you're mediocre at best.
Yeah, right.
I mean, there are some companies, like some of the products that you have talked about, I know that some of them are you can just keep doing it. You don't have to change it. You just keep making it. People are still going to buy it. You don't have to change it. And that gives you the freedom to pay attention to other things that might be a challenge, because you'll make money off of those other staples, and you can now put your mind to the challenges that will help the business grow. But some people never do that. they just do mediocre.
A lot of them, and relationships inside companies where that goes on. What you just said, where somebody's intimidated to come in and say what they need to say, tell the truth about something that's not going to be perceived well. And relationship between the CEO and their head quality or food safety person. I mean, they have to have your back, and if they're intimidated to come and tell you there's a problem, you're in trouble.
I think that went on for years, though, with most companies, production and quality. Quality wanted to shut the line down. Production said, no, we're going to make our numbers. But I think that's gone away.
Yeah, when you get a production employee come in and say, hey, I opened a box and I saw something that didn't look right, and they're bringing it to someone's attention, or whatever it is, those are really those are the things that your training is working at that point. That person realizes how important it is, but they also know if they say something, they're going to be there for 2 more hours, and it's already after the end of their shift.
Ugh.
So but they know how important it is.
That's where you get the loyalty. You get they see the big picture. It might be 2 hours right now tonight, but it means that we're not shutting down the line for a whole week and losing hours. And some ways it could be so catastrophic you lose the company.
And they're consumers too. And they have families and people at home that are counting on their counterparts in other companies to do the same thing.
Now that you're retired, have you got more time for the grandchildren and the travel and the fun stuff?
We do a little bit. We're working on a second home and not too far away on the lake, so we'll spend some time there next summer. We were a little bit late in the season when we were able to get it last year, but so that's exciting. How
far away from home?
2 hours, and
okay.
And 3 from one of my other kids. So it's in a good central location.
So, but when you travel, where do you go?
We're gonna do a Mexico quick thing coming up in December. We went to Ireland last year in the fall, right after the transaction, which was good for about the first half, and then out of nowhere, I've never had this happen, but I hurt my back, and I looked like the Hunchback of Notre Dame for the next 10 days or 7 days of that trip. So we have some making up to do on that one. We have to go back and do the second half of that. I made it through Dublin, and then I was done.
Was that your first time to Ireland?
It was, both of ours, yeah. And Joyce's family is from there, but I found out recently with my spare time, I'm doing some Ancestry.com stuff, and found out that my grandfather Klingman, who it's German, the name's German. His dad was German. His mom was born in Dublin, so which I didn't know.
I've been to Ireland 3 times. Well, I tell people this all the time, and I even tell people when they go into like meet companies and stuff. Almost everybody does it better the second time. Even if you go to a restaurant, you go back and you order the right thing this time, or you know where to sit. Like if I go back there, go on vacation, I know I'm not going to stay there. I'll go stay over at this other place, or I'll rent, from those people. So yeah, the second trip's always better. So, but now my first 2 trips was not with my husband, because the first time I went with a friend, the second time I went with my daughter. So the third time he demanded that he got to go. And I was like, okay, because he's as Irish as I am. So he said he wanted to go, and I said, that's great. So we got our friends together and went.
Sounds like a good trip.
Well, John, I think that we've covered everything. Thank you so much for talking about Sokol and about family. And
yeah, good to see you.
Thanks so much.